Hare Hare Bo. Hare Krishna. We'll probably chant a little more later on, but we've been asked you to talk a little bit on the Bhagavad Gita. And if you don't have a copy, but we do, I believe, have sufficient copies here. This is a nice little edition of the Bhagavad Gita. Little vinyl cover. Printing is a little small, but it's easy to read. We don't have the bigger version, do we? Well, make do with whatever we have here. Some of you are studying the Bhagavad Gita. You have a course on studying the Bhagavad Gita. You want to start one, is that right?
We start a discussion, weekly discussion.
Starting a monthly discussion?
Weekly.
Weekly. Here? So there'll be a weekly discussion group here. I don't know when it starts.
Today.
So we're starting today, okay. So with a weekly discussion group starting today. I don't know how it will be, Hare Krishna, systematic or topical, I don't know what your plans are. Whoever's orchestrating that program, but it's a good program because, as we heard earlier a little bit, that this is knowledge which, in one sense we could say, transcends all the various dualities of this world, all the various situations which have arisen due to karma and time and so on. It's knowledge which is applicable maybe in different degrees or different aspects of it, but is applicable to all. Every living entity, not only human beings, so it's human beings, species, let's say. The species of human life is as the ideal species in order to try to understand knowledge. Generally in the lower species of life, the animal species, their knowledge is limited basically to that which is relevant to their nature, their condition, nature. They may have knowledge of what to eat, how to make living quarters, how to have mating, and how to defend themselves. But they have very little knowledge beyond that, very little, if any. And sometimes it's very withdrawn, very limited. Whereas human beings have the capacity to expand their knowledge beyond those particular capacities, to inquire or to find out. As people do, they like to know what's the cause of life, what's the origins of the universe. It's a natural kind of thing for a human being to want to know what's going on and why. Unfortunately, they don't usually go beyond the material framework, and their knowledge is thus frustrated, limited, and doesn't do an awful lot of good. So the Bhagavad Gita gives us knowledge of the material world also, but it gives us knowledge of the spiritual realm, how we can get out of the material world. So there are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, and most of it's kind of introductory, you could say, very introductory. How this Bhagavad Gita was spoken is not as something which is created. Sometimes people say, when did this Hare Krishna begin? There is no time because it's eternal. Hare Krishna means basically our eternal relationship with the Supreme. It's eternal. It's not got, you can't say it started 5,000 years ago. People say, some, that this knowledge was spoken 5,000 years ago, but here in this book, you want to sit on a chair? You'd like a chair? Would you like a chair? Are you sure? You're comfortable? This knowledge was spoken 5,000 years ago by Krishna, so they say. Some people say differently, but that's the general understanding. But even there, Krishna says, he spoke this Bhagavad Gita, at least the knowledge therein, the same teaching, millions and millions of years before. And this is, you could say, not possible for modern historians or scientists and so on to accept. Of course, they don't believe that human life was developed millions and millions of years ago. That's their limited understanding, with no real concrete evidential proof to say it did or didn't, in one sense. But according to the Vedic literatures, the scriptures, including the Bhagavad Gita, that life has always existed. always existed, and as long as this universe has existed, life has existed within it. So this has been going on from time immemorial. So this knowledge has always been there. It's like if you create, some people are very creative, they may create something, say they create some vehicle of some kind, motorized electronic vehicle. Along with that, they will provide you with a guidebook, how to utilize that vehicle. Manual, for your car, for your computer, for your mobile, whatever it is. A manual will be available to help you to use it, otherwise we won't know what to do with it. So similarly, in this material world, particularly for human form of life, a manual is provided for human beings to take advantage of, to give us guidance how to utilize this human form of life. And they call it, and there are many manuals at certain time and circumstances for certain purposes. You know, you may have an aircon in there, so there's one to tell you how to work the aircon and so on, although it's not necessarily a part of the car itself, but it's added on. So at certain times, certain things may be needed to be emphasized, but the basic foundational knowledge is found in what's called the Vedas. And amongst the Vedas, there are many different, Veda means knowledge, guidebooks for mankind, to help guide us through our life in the human form of life, how to utilize this body for the best purpose and for the highest purpose, spiritual purpose, as we heard earlier, for emancipation, not just for enjoying ourselves temporarily in this world, that's also there, but the higher purpose is to emancipate the soul from this bodily identification, or this entanglement in the material world. So, as we heard that a little bit earlier, but particularly amongst the Vedas, and particularly in this moment of time, we don't have the capacity, the time either, neither are they fully available to go through all of these ancient texts which have been put into written form in Sanskrit language. But amongst them, this is Bhagavad Gita. It's not the original Veda, it's called the Upanishadic. Upanishads are commentaries on the Vedas, practical explanations of how to put them into practice. And this is, Bhagavad Gita is like, in a nutshell, the essence of all the Vedas, in a nutshell, from beginning to end, practically, in a very condensed but a practical form which can be applied, never mind if you're an atheist, a theist, a Muslim, a Christian, a Buddhist, a Hindu, or something else, man, woman, black, white, it makes no difference. Knowledge is knowledge, and this is knowledge which is applicable to all. Of course, some of it may be seen more applicable to certain, but the essence of this knowledge is applicable to all because it pertains to our actual spiritual identity, who we are beyond the bodily concept of life, or the subtle concept we think with the mind or the intellect, or mostly the body. But what is it beyond that is perceiving the mind? You know, we look at our minds, and we say look at our minds, all the time we're basically, watching what happens in our on the mental plane. Sometimes we try to control it with the intellect, but most of the time we're just basically viewers. And the mind's likened in, sometimes it's like, the body is like a vehicle, the mind is like the reins on a chariot, like the reins. The horses are like the senses, the driver is like the intellect, and the soul is likened to the passenger. We're witnessing all this, and we say like that also, my body, my God, my leg is really giving me pain. We don't say me leg is giving my pain. My leg, that means you're the owner of the leg, is giving me, the owner, pain. There's two different things. There's the leg and the owner of the leg. They're not the same. And we say the same thing about the mind. I'm having so much problem with my mind these days. Ordinary people say that, if they're having problem. I'm having so much problem with my mind. Immediately perhaps they don't have the awareness. Sometimes the closest thing to us is the only thing we don't see. You can't see your eyes, for instance, but they're the means of seeing. When you look in a mirror and see a reflection. Otherwise we can't see them. You might be able to see the tip of your nose. That's about the only thing you can see on your face. Can't see the rest unless you have a mirror. So we can't see it, but that's the senses, the ears and nose, what have you, are the means of perception. We can't see them practically. You might be able to see the tip of the nose, but that's it. So, it's the idea is there to understand who is that owner, who is the me, who is the I. You say possessor if you like. We're not the ultimate possessor, but temporarily we appear to be in that position. So to find out who I am, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. What's the loss? So Bhagavad Gita is the science of realizing or understanding who am I by a practical application. Very practical. There are 18 chapters. It's kind of a progression in some ways to the ultimate understanding. Starts off just like we're in a kind of a doubtful, perplexed condition of life when it comes to spiritual understanding. It starts off like that. Krishna, master of all mystics, the supreme origin, the supreme being, so it's understood, is speaking to Arjuna. Arjuna, these are names, ancient names from ancient India, who happen to be what's called a Kshatriya, it means a king, kings, royalty. And he also had a responsibility, much against his will, he had to fight. Devotee doesn't necessarily like war or fighting, but they're sometimes required. So before this battle, Krishna spoke this knowledge. Because even if you have to do, whatever you have to do in life, it's not so much what you do, but the consciousness in which we work. Most of us work in material consciousness, seeing ourselves in the center as the doer, the enjoyer, and so on. There's a consciousness in which we work. So that's key. So Bhagavad Gita is, you could say, primarily directed towards the consciousness in which we work. Whatever work we do, whatever we do in life, the consciousness in which we do it is not what we do only. What we do is also relevant, and that's also discussed. We should act. Krishna explains this in the 3rd chapter, Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, yoga of proper action, how to act properly to help facilitate our spiritual needs and our material needs. When we're properly situated according to our nature, one will naturally be more peaceful, one will naturally be more happy. Very hard to find that. Even that basic step is not so easy, not so common. That people are really at home with what they're doing. Nathan, you may like to do journalism, which you like journalism, kind of. So that may be an example of being a little bit more at home with your nature. What do you do? Like Lennox?
Yeah.
What do you do?
No, I'm studying.
What are you studying?
Travel and tourism.
Traveling and tourism. Maybe you like to travel?
Yeah.
So, it's not exactly your nature because you're it is partially, but you're traveling, you're going to do something where you travel, maybe it'll be to, I don't know, tourist guide or something, something, maybe you like doing that sort of thing. It may be something like our nature. What was your name again?
Gavin.
Darren?
Yeah, Gavin.
Gavin.
Yeah.
Gavin, what do you do?
I'm kind of just studying part-time just now. I'm not
Studying what?
working.
Studying?
I'm doing an Arts and Humanities course.
Arts and Humanities?
Yeah.
You're not sure what you want to do?
I think I would like to, possibly long-term, in the actual course I plan to develop my creative writing skills.
Writing skills.
And
Yeah.
try and make a living out of writing,
Yeah.
to be honest. That would be the goal.
Yeah.
But I'll probably get some form of employment soon, just to keep.
Sometimes we have to take employment because we need to take employment. It's not always what we naturally would do.
Yeah.
And it's a little complicated, I suppose, in the modern age we live in, but people's natural capacity or their natural inclinations, materially speaking, that is, are not always so clear. Sometimes they're clear, sometimes they're not. But if we're situated a little bit more a situation where we like what we're doing in a sense, materially, generally speaking, one's more, obviously if we like it, we'll be happier, and we'll be more peaceful at home. So that's a foundational thing. It's not spiritual in of itself. But being in that situation, we're usually a little bit more peaceful for spiritual life. So recommendation is there. But mainly it's on the, you could say, the consciousness with which we work, not just the work itself. That's important, but the consciousness with which we work is that which needs to be looked at carefully. And so much of the Bhagavad Gita is aimed at the consciousness, or our particular, let's say, what we could include perception within that, how we see things. So the third chapter deals largely with that. Arjuna was perplexed about what to do, and so on and so forth. So Krishna first of all explains you should act according to your nature. Your nature. And in the ancient times, the system was called Varna Ashram, which is the natural inclinations of living beings being properly facilitated, cultivated, and so on and so forth. Facilitated especially, and guided according to one's nature, one be guided. Are we okay? Welcome those who've just arrived. Thank you. And then spiritual guidance will be given. Human life, you know. Animals don't have to worry, they automatically act according to their nature. So it's not just to act according to one's nature, but to develop, you know, Krishna consciousness. We call it Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, within one's work. And if we act according to our nature and work properly, it's a God-given system, Chaturvanyam Maya Shrishtam, Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita. According to their, you know, qualities of work, our nature, people should be engaged accordingly. And then the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna starts to begin, clearly beginning, you could say, the path of transcendental consciousness, acting in this world, but acting in a different way, not the way that most people act. Most people are called fruitive workers. We said the term karma, and karmi means one who's acting for material reasons and is causing material reactions. Called karmi. So most people are acting in that way, but Krishna begins to explain how we can act just the same as anything. You can be a journalist, you can be a tourist guide, you can be a writer, I don't know what anyone else is doing, IT specialist probably, some of you, or whatever it may be, to do that in relationship with Krishna, or in spiritual consciousness. So he talks about that in the fourth chapter, how that can be developed, that vision, or that consciousness in which we act. And in that way the Bhagavad Gita goes on. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, different stages are there up to the perfection of, you know, of life, basically. What is the ultimate goal of life? And how to achieve that is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. But I'm going to start with the very basics, very basic, 2 or 3 basic verses, which are knowledge which can be applied, basic knowledge, spiritual knowledge, which can be applied in our day-to-day lives. So we're going to go to the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is called, and the dear Prabhupada calls it the contents of the Gita summarized. It does cover most of the topics, only briefly, but we're going to cover the basic, first ones. It's called Gyan. Gyan means knowledge. Knowledge of the difference between the matter and spirit, difference between body and soul. Very basic. So it starts with Arjuna, as we mentioned. He's somewhere perplexed. He's like us. We're not quite sure what we're doing, where we're going, what the goal of life is, a little bit bewildered. And Krishna starts to speak. He says, to Arjuna, he says, while speaking learned words, you were mourning. 'Cause Arjuna was very afraid, there's battle, so many people are going to get killed, we're going to lose one's relatives and friends and everything. He was very compassionate, and he was lamenting over this. So the first thing Krishna says, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. It sounds quite callous. When someone dies, naturally you have a feeling there. Everyone does. Even if you don't know them, if you see it happening, you have a kind of affects us, What to speak of someone close to us, or our own self, of course. It really affects us. And we may mourn, we may be grief-stricken. It's not unusual, it's normal. But ultimately, he says, you are mourning for what is not worthy grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. That's referring, materially speaking, for those who are living or those who died, materially speaking. Because they know, in the next verse, Krishna says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all of these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. In other words, Krishna is saying, you don't die. You're eternal. What are you crying over? What are you mourning over? And the example is given a little bit later in this chapter, we won't get to it, but it's like perhaps you wear different clothes every day. You may put on a different shirt, different dress. You don't cry when you take your clothes off at night, if you do. When you do. Or maybe you have to, get new ones or something. The old ones are worn out. Or maybe you do, I don't know. But most people don't cry, when your old shirt is worn out. What are you crying for? My shirt. Not very often. And you get a new shirt, so do you. It's a big deal. So the body is like a shirt. It's described like, it's like a change of dress. So what's the big deal? The body, they say, and we know it is anyway, combination of atoms, chemicals. Why cry over that? Why cry over it? Because we're very attached to it. It's like we may, for instance, we may become attached to anything. May become attached to your favorite cup. And when you lose it, you get upset, or whatever it is. But it's not us. It's kind of childlike, Children get so attached to their teddy bears or their dollies or something. They cry like anything if they're lost. It's an external thing. So what is not really anything to cry over? It's chemicals, atoms. And if you understand the soul is eternal, then what is the need to cry over that? You're eternal. You're just changing dress, that's all. It may sound a little callous to some, but that's because we only have this material understanding. We have spiritual understanding, and it's not easy to have. Everything makes sense. Without understanding this basic principle of the eternal nature of the soul, and everything else is just a philosophy, but it doesn't have any deep significance in one sense. And we can't really apply it properly. The basic premise of spiritual life is we're not this body. First, A, B, C. And most people, even though they're maybe a little pious, they're practicing religion, but even this kind of basic, even fundamental, even theoretical, is very vague, if there at all. It's not very clear. The next verse, Krishna speaks, as the embodied soul, the soul is in the body, continuously passes, it never stops. Many of us can remember when we were little tiny kids, perhaps 2 or 3 years old. I don't know if anyone can remember before that. Sometimes people can, but very rarely. Usually 2 or 3 is, maybe 4 even, is the first memory that we can retain. Does anyone remember being 2, 3, or 4 years old? You do? You remember perhaps something, some being somewhere, or people you were with, or some situation that happened around us. Some vague memory is there, which stays with us throughout our lives. But we don't remember most of it, and we don't remember anything usually before that. What to speak of being in the womb or being born. I've never met, there may be some people, but I've never met anyone who remembers being born. Maybe there's some people, I don't know. I've never met one. Same thing in the womb. You do meet people sometimes who say they remember previous lifetimes. I don't know if it's true or not, but some people say that. Might be. But generally not. Can't remember much before 2, 3, 4 years of age. And then we remember other things at different stages. And you look at a picture. Sometimes you see a picture when you're a baby, just maybe a few weeks, 2 days old even. Parents sometimes take pictures of the kids. And at different stages of your growth. That's me when I was 2 weeks old. That's me when I was a year old. That's me when I'm 2. That's me when I'm 4. That's me when I was 6. That's me when I was 8. That's me when I was 11. Like this, they go through a photo album, of me. My photo album. And that's me. That's me when I was 2. Is it you or is it not you? It doesn't look like you. You sure that's you? It doesn't look anything like you. Maybe there's some vague semblance of some of the features. But definitely not overall. Tiny little body, maybe chubby. I was really fat when I was a baby. Really fat. I saw some pictures when I was a few months old. I was like a balloon. And became skinny. I'm getting more balloon-like again now. Going back to the baby. But we know, that's me, that's mine. That's when but then I was a baby. We're not really a baby, we got a baby body. That's me in a baby body. And so on and so forth. So this knowledge is kind of simple logic, but it's also hard to really deeply understand. As the embodied soul, we're in this body, continually passes, you can't stop it. You can't stop the aging of this body very well, can you? A little bit maybe, but not much. Can't really do much about it. It's the way the material nature works. Time. Acting on the material energy causes the birth, the growth, the maintenance, the dwindling and the destruction of the body. All bodies, even cells, everything, the whole universe eventually. And we go from boyhood to youth to old age. What the body does anyway. The soul similarly passes into another body at death. That's the process, changing dress. We're changing dress within this life, but at death we completely change trains, get on a different one. According to, our karma, our desire, we get another body. And then we move on. A sober person, one who's not overwhelmed by the material attachments or identifications, one's not intoxicated with material sense enjoyment, is not bewildered by such a change. For most people, they try to deny its existence altogether. They don't like it, and other people are bewildered. They're not sure what's going on. And the next verse, text 14, Krishna says to Arjuna, "O son of Kunti," that's the name of Arjuna. Krishna says, "the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons." In Scotland, do you have summer in Scotland? Do you have a summer?
3 days per year, I think. 3 days.
3 days?
No, I think 1 month.
Oh boy, it's getting tropical up here. So you have some kind of summer, different degrees. Many people would say it's different degrees of winter. A warmer winter, cooler winter, freezing winter, and a wet, windy winter. 4 types of winters. So sometimes they say in one day you get all 4. Some people say that. But they're coming and going, and You can't do much about stopping that, can you? You can adjust your own relationship with it, but you can't stop it. You can't say, okay, we've just had a vote in Parliament, there will be no winter this year. Harry Ball, someone said. Yeah. That's the best thing you can do if they make such a resolution as that, because there's nothing they can do to make it happen. It's going to happen, or it's not going to happen, but it's not within our power. We think we're in control. We can't control it. We have very little control over the material nature. Minor, very tiny. Beyond that. One time, back in the 60s, there was a science convention maybe they call it, in Berlin, Germany. And it was Man's Conquest Over Nature. That was the title. Man's Conquest Over Nature. And then, because obviously the scientists were coming from other countries, they were flying into Berlin. And there was a sign, convention cancelled due to circumstances beyond our control. There was a blizzard and no planes couldn't land. Man's conquest over nature is a joke. I mean, that's not a joke, but I mean, it is a joke to think that we're conquering over nature. What we have to conquer over is our senses, our illusion, not nature. Nature is God's nature. It's not. We didn't arrange it. It's a perfect arrangement. We meddle with it, mess it up maybe, but we have to conquer over this false ego of thinking I am the doer. This is me. I am the doer. All these illusions we're in, which are causing us the suffering. They're causing all the wars. They're causing all the arguments, all the misexploitation of the world, all the anxiety and stress and everything else that people experience in this bodily state of life. This false identity, duality, is due to this false understanding of who we are. Foundation, when we understand every single living being is a spirit soul, and we're all equal in quality. The whole world, the perception of the world changes automatically. At least theoretically we should try to understand this a little bit. We have to read the Bhagavad Gita more deeply, or other literatures which help us. And not only that, but the realization that which is emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita is this is not armchair philosophy or speculation. It's a practical execution of knowledge. And we know, even materially, if you have knowledge, an easy one would be, say, like, I don't know, this is a restaurant downstairs. Are you cooking in the restaurant? I don't know your name. Prabhu, what's your name? Your name? Yeah. Pratik. Pratik or Pradeep? Pratik. So Pratik, are you in the restaurant or not? Are you involved in the restaurant?
No.
So obviously somebody is. There is a restaurant. What's it called? Something Guru? Huh?
The Grill Guru.
The Grilla Guru. The Grill Guru. Anyway, it's sort of, whatever it is, it is. But there's someone in the restaurant down there, and I don't know if they're open now, but they obviously cook. They're open, are they? They're not operating anymore. Closed? Permanently closed? Oh, what a shame. So anyway, it's not open. But normally if the restaurant is open, then they're cooking. And they may have some kind of recipe. Now if you go into the, when you go into the restaurant, they usually have the menu on the table, isn't it? There's a menu. You sit down at the table, and there's a menu. It may say, I don't know what they say, lasagna, pasta, whatever, something Italian. If it's Chinese, it'll be some, chop suey or something. They eat to eat noodles. And in an Indian restaurant, you'll see their dosa, whatever. Huh? Curry. Puri curry, okay. Biryani rice or something. And if it's an English restaurant, fish and chips. Very sophisticated menu. And if you're lucky, you can get some boiled peas. There might be some salt on the table as well. A cup of coffee. But there'll be a menu there, and tell you the menu and the price. And you sit down and you say, well, can you give me this? And they come and they just give you the recipe. Here you are. This is the recipe for fish and chips. You don't need a recipe. Maybe a little bit, but not much. But say it's a recipe for lasagna. It's quite complicated. Here's the recipe. No, I didn't pay for the recipe. I want the lasagna. No, here's the recipe. Do it yourself. You won't be very satisfied. So in some ways you could say like the teaching of Bhagavad Gita is like a recipe. How to do it. But if you don't apply it, what are you going to get from it? What are you going to get? You're going to get a lasagna. You're going to get a result if you don't apply the information. No matter what it is, guidebook, you have to utilize that knowledge. Otherwise, what will we get? What will you get? Hungry. Right? You can't eat a recipe, can you? It's not possible. Well, you can, but it won't satisfy your hunger. Even saying, lasagna, 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 it's not going to bring satisfaction. We have to put the knowledge into practice. So the guidelines, how to put this knowledge into practice, are there. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, in order to do that, we have to approach an expert, someone who's actually a knowledge of the subject, how to put that knowledge into practice. Because by putting that knowledge into practice, in the next 4th chapter, Krishna says if you put it into practice, that knowledge will become Pratyaksha Bhagavam Dharmyam. In the 9th chapter he says that, but in the 4th chapter, so if you put it into practice, you'll realize that knowledge in due course. We have to put it into practice. Otherwise we just speculate, I agree, I don't agree, I don't. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. If I say to you, this apple pie is very nice, I don't believe you. What can I say? I don't care if you do or don't, in one sense, but if you want to really find out, you've got to taste it. You can't say it's not nice without tasting it. You have to taste it. So the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So putting that knowledge into practice, then you can see. So this knowledge Krishna is speaking is meant to be applied. How to apply, we take advice from experts if we don't know how. And this is one of them. How happiness and distress come and go all the time. You can't stop it. Even if you try for happiness, you still get distress. You may get some happiness, but they're both is the world of duality. They're like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer. We can't stop it. They arise from sense perception. When we're perceiving the material objects as the objects of our pleasure, and we identify with them and so on, then we're going to get this dual experience. One must learn to tolerate. That's another factor. Learn to tolerate. Of course, that's not something we can do maybe mechanically, we can try, but it's not something that happens straight away. It's a process whereby one automatically is tolerant to the dualities of this world, not affected by them. Tolerate them without being disturbed. It's not just a question of tolerating, but without disturbance. And that can only be evoked or experienced when we're actually seeing ourselves apart from both the objects of the senses, the body, the mind, etc. We see those, but we see ourselves apart from that also. They're not us, they're instruments. Just like you have an instrument for eating, a knife and a fork, or a spoon, or whatever you use. It's an instrument for your purpose. But it doesn't affect you if the spoon is like, breaks or something. It may, but it shouldn't do. So the body, mind, everything is important, necessary to look after it, etc. But it's not that we should be so overwhelmed and completely dependent upon it. So the whole idea of human life is to rise above that a little bit, to understand our nature beyond and above it. And the last verse, which we'll read, I think. The person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation, for freedom. When we're not disturbed, We see ourselves apart from the mind, body, spirit, and intellect, and senses, and so on, sense objects, and not be disturbed by the interaction which takes place in our conscious awareness. We're not disturbed by that. You know, you can give an example. Sometimes we may be watching a television program, and I have honestly watched a television program for 54 years. But you may watch a television program, and we used to watch, and to give an example, we used to watch sometimes the horror movie. I don't know if they still show horror movies on TV or not. At midnight on Saturday night, they used to show a horror movie. They put a warning before the movie comes. Those of nervous disposition are warned. You know, midnight is also not a very kind of good time for that. And, you know, it'd be some really scary movie. And, you know, you really shake you up, you know, not the best thing to watch before you fall asleep. But they used to do this, you know. You get affected by it. People sometimes get really affected what they see on the TV. The news, of course, is somewhat slightly different, but the same principle. Or even football. There was one, I mean, before I joined, there was one article, I remember reading it. There was a football match, an international football match. And you know, the husband was mad for football. He was a football fanatic. The wife hated it. So this is in the newspapers. Apparently she was kept on telling him, turn it off. She would try to sometimes forcibly turn it over. They had a real argument over this, you know. It really became quite intense. He kept turning it. He was drunk. He was watching the football in his house, and he was drinking. And this was going on. Some of his mates were with him. It was a World Cup match. And he was getting really excited, angry throughout the match. And then he got really angry with his wife, and he picked up a knife and stabbed her to death and carried on watching the TV. Woke up in the morning, drunk, realized what had happened. Madness. This is the madness of false identity. And that's what's happening in the world. People fighting over false labels, killing each other, torturing each other, mistreating each other, exploiting each other, and so on, and other species of life also. Simply because of this ignorance of identity. So this is just the first lesson, more or less the first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita. And there are many, so many lessons, but this is the first lesson. And it's a premise to the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. And much of the Bhagavad Gita is also there to help us realize, not just to, wow, maybe that's true, it sounds realistic, it sounds logical, but it's not enough to just sound logical. One has to also have some internal realization of these states, or this knowledge. Okay, that's the A, an ABC start, that's just A. So you're having discussions, you go on to B and C. Don't start with Z, with Z, you start with A. Start at the beginning and work up. Any discussion? Basics, PP, all the P's.
Talking about learning to tolerate. So if you're learning something, usually there's some kind of system or process to learn. So I was just wondering what is the system?
Learning to tolerate, you said, what was the next sentence?
And normally there's some kind of system if you're learning something. So what is that process for learning?
Oh, for learning to tolerate.
As opposed to just going through the same school of hard knocks again and again and not actually learning.
Yeah. Well, you know, we've already mentioned a couple of factors there. One was, when you're disturbed already, it's pretty hard to tolerate. Because people are not rightly situated in life. It's more difficult. You know, we probably all had experiences in life where when you feel more at home with what you're doing, you're not so disturbed with what's going on around you, what others are doing, depending. In general, it's a very generalized statement. But you're not so disturbed because if you're not peaceful at home, you're definitely not going to be peaceful away. It'd be really easy to become agitated with others. When you've had a bad experience yourself, a traumatic experience, it's easy to get, create trauma with others and so on. Because it's your kind of consciousness is disturbed, then naturally it'd be more difficult to tolerate others in various ways or other situations. So that's what we mentioned at the beginning, the first thing is somewhat, and it's very difficult in this age of Kali, somewhat difficult because it's very hard to find who we are materially, what to speak of spiritually. But it's the same principle, understanding when we understand our own identity, then, and ultimately of course is understanding everything's relationship with Krishna or God. That's another lesson, that comes later. This point is just one's own identity and one's not mentioning anything about relationship with the Supreme. It's like in the body, Have you ever bitten your tongue? Has anyone ever bitten their tongue? This term, bite your tongue. Have you ever done that? And you almost feel angry sometimes, isn't it? But to whom are you being angry? To whom are you being angry? The tongue? Your teeth? Who are you going to get angry with? Huh? Pardon?
Mind.
Maybe the mind. But, who are you going to... anger is, you could say, is experienced in the mind. So it's kind of silly. It's like getting angry with yourself, which you can say. But it's all the same. It's your tongue, it's your mind, it's your teeth, and your lips, whatever it is. So when we understand this relationship with Krishna, everything, whom have we got to get angry with? Everyone is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that sense. So who are we getting angry with? It's a false identity problem, an illusion, ignorance. Because of ignorance we become overwhelmed. Of course anger is also a cause, there's a causal fact within this world of frustrated desire. When we don't get what we want, we become angry. Anyone knows that. Not just from kids' point of view, but adults also can get angry when they don't get what they want. They can't tolerate it. So again, it's a source, a causal factor is ignorance. So removal of ignorance, automatically the effects of ignorance are removed. The cause of anger is passion and ignorance. So removing passion and ignorance, and there's no effect, the reaction won't take place, the anger won't take place. Yeah. And then the realization of one's spiritual nature and being more appropriately situated materially, where we're more at home or peaceful with ourselves. We're not so disturbed with things around us or people around us. Now, so what is the process? So the process therein was mentioned earlier on, particularly for this age where people are not so well situated, they're not so intelligent, they're not so spiritually, evolved, we're pretty ignorant spiritually. So in this age, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is the essential means whereby we can solve all of these problems. You start feeling angry, start chanting Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. There's some material techniques, of course, but that's not... We want to get to the root. It's not just about tolerating on the surface. Krishna wants us to get to the root, so there's no more, sometimes people say, please forgive me for something we did to you. But there is, we should forgive, and we should ask for forgiveness, but in a real sense there's nothing. Because the devotee doesn't feel that anyone could harm you anyway. The devotee sees everything in relationship with Krishna, so there's nothing really to forgive. In the first place, it's Krishna's, nothing happens without his will, and the devotee feels it's Krishna's mercy on me, and but this on a high level of consciousness. We may not be there. So. The process is to come to that level of consciousness, where we're not disturbed by the dualities of this world. We're not disturbed by the various reactions that come before our consciousness. We'll act accordingly, but we're not disturbed by it. It's like a doctor. I mean, if a doctor is disturbed to see a patient when they come in, you know, leg half off, you know, torn apart, or, you know, bones sticking out here and there. The doctor's screaming and crying and running for his life, you know, seeing this. That's not going to work, is it? The doctor immediately gets to work to try to repair the body. He can't be affected by that. So, you know, because he's trained in that science. So the training is the purification of our hearts. Krishna will also arrange situations to give us the chance to test our level, you can say, of progress in this regards, to not be so affected. If we're getting radically affected by various situations around us, you know, there's other angles of this, of course. You know, Arjuna was certainly fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He was doing it for Krishna. He was doing it in consciousness. So Krishna is a little different. But when we're doing it for ourselves, or we're doing it for some material returns, then definitely there's a cause of disturbance there. So when trying to become Krishna conscious is a solution to this. To try to see it in relationship with Krishna. Try to remember Krishna. And that's a matter of, you can imply it, we can try to imply it when we find ourselves in these challenge situations. Or, you know, the real thing is, of course, is to rise above it. Rise above the storm. You can see the storm, but you're not disturbed by it. That's the real essence. The practice is mainly the chanting, and that goes along with service, practical service, utilizing our propensities in whatever way we can in Krishna's service. Working conscious of Krishna when we're doing our, materially speaking, our various duties in life. Just trying to become Krishna conscious in various ways. Associating with devotees. Associate with those who are more advanced in spiritual life. Who are honestly tolerant and not just for show, but they're tolerant because of spiritual advancement. That ultimately helps us to progress on that path. And read the Bhagavad Gita carefully, particularly the purport. If you haven't got it, please get one. There's also this nice book, Chant and Be Happy. It's it's not everything. There's conversations, discussions there on the chanting of the holy names or the mantra, and so on. It's nice, simple little book. In essence, and just a few books in front of me here. This is a book compiled by a few devotees, including one local sannyasi here, Keshava Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj, on typical questions people ask. It talks about the nature of God, it talks about the nature of the Guru, it talks about what religion is, it talks about, you know, relationships of various kinds, the Vedic literatures, different things. What is yoga, bhakti yoga, it talks about questions and answers in there, quite interesting, I guess. Living in Unnatural Happiness, I haven't read it. Has anyone read this book? Anyone read it? You've read it? I don't know whether, what is it relevant? It's relevant to our situation, I guess it must be. Yeah. He's very connected with the day that we're living in. And this little book, I believe, is also very eye-opening, whatever little I've read of it. Hop to the party, that's not. I'm not sure some of the titles, don't understand, I'm so out of date. Stop the world, I want to get on. Kind of catchy statements. Ending the matrix of illusion. Matrix. Spiritual economics. Yeah, like that. So, interesting books. There are more at the back there if you're interested. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Hmm? Yes. What's your name? Gaurav. Gaurav. What's that? Gaurav. Gaurav.
Maharajji, it is said that whatever is happening, it is happened by the Krishna, like
Krishna's will,
he
yeah.
is the supreme doer of everything.
Yeah.
But what about the problems which we create for ourselves sometimes? So
Yeah, yeah.
we can say that it is done by Krishna, or
It could be, some people do like that. They blame, okay, if Krishna, everything happens, not a blade of grass moves without his will. So it's his fault, not mine. Don't blame me. You have to blame him that I killed you. Don't blame me. So sometimes that's an extreme example, but in any situation, sometimes that could be a kind of a misuse of the understanding or the logic of it. Well, there's a very... Now, are you married?
yes,
You got a kid?
yes.
How old is your child?
7,
Oh, it's quite mature. One child or what?
1.
So, sometimes your child wants something, but it's not really good for them. I don't know, you may or may not have had that experience, but that sometimes happens. Especially young kiddies, they want to play with fire, for instance. I'll give an example. They want to play with fire. Will you let them play with fire? But they may, and then they get burned, you see. So you try to avoid it. Sometimes they insist. Let's give an example which is a little bit more, let's say, thorough. Say the child wants to have some particular toy. He's already got 100 toys that he's not playing with. He wants another one, and it keeps on and on and on. You say, no, you've already got 100 toys. You're not using those. Use what you've got first, okay? You're trying to help the child to understand a little bit, in a nice way, of course. The child carries on and on and on. All right, then. You may give way and you give the child something. Now, it's not your will, it's the child's will, but without your will, the child will not get that toy. You're providing the toy. So, it's like that with those living entities who are in this world. We are insisting that we want to try to enjoy this world separately from Krishna, or for our own sense gratification, in whatever way it is. We have our karmas due to how we dealt in the past. We have our personal desires all combined, cannot be fulfilled without the will of the Lord. So he's actually reciprocating with the individual soul. Now when we see things like war and suffering of various kinds, which we define as suffering, we just heard it's a material factor, but still, because we identify with it, we're feeling great suffering or great pain. And these things are not to be recommended, so to speak, in this world, but they evolve because of ignorance. And the living entity wants to be ignorant or wants to be separated from our relationship with Krishna. And in the course of that, we behave in various ways, and then there's a karmic reaction. Karmic reaction may come in various ways. Everyone is experiencing karmic reaction, whether you die this way or die that way, suffer this way or suffer that way. It's all various forms of karma. Now in the human form of life there's another aspect to that, which is not just a karmic reaction, which has simply a mechanistic focus and doesn't seem to have any meaning except for a never-ending cycle of karma. What's the point of it? There's a learning lesson here, and you're meant to learn in the human form of life. So Krishna doesn't just, through his agencies, by the way, he doesn't directly, through his material energy, this law of karma is being enacted. The modes of nature are arranging various situations where we get happiness and distress according to our previous activities. But there's also a learning lesson to be learned in every situation. Now, maybe we don't have much, let's say, in this world today, at least, there's not much education in spirituality or in this way. What to learn from this, and that's why the Bhagavad Gita is so important, because it clarifies these situations. It helps us to understand and avoid the unnecessary, avoid these things evolving in the first place. It's not just a question of tolerating them even. It's not just a question of understanding why. It's a question of making a change as well. And when the consciousness changes, automatically so many of the things which we experience change. So the real essence, or the real purpose of the Lord's teachings, or the Lord's coming in this world, or of one of his representatives, is to change our conscious awareness, so we no longer act in a way which is so, say, exploitative or causing karma and suffering to other living beings. And thus things like wars and other forms of, pain, suffering in this world can be eradicated. Not necessarily within this world, but one can rise above this world. The living entity can transcend it. So that's the essence. So that also the Lord is giving us this opportunity. And we can learn through suffering. Suffering is reaction. You can release from bad karma. But unfortunately, without knowledge, we create it yet again and again and again. Like a drug addict or something. They get released and they get drugged again. Or a criminal engaged in criminal again. It's your will. But the facility to fulfill your will is ultimately provided by nature, which is under Krishna's direction. But he's reciprocating with us. It's like the prison is there for prisoners, for criminals. You can't blame the government, but in one sense you can't blame the judge. The judge is just giving according to your behavior. So Krishna's kind of like reciprocating with our will, with women, the material world, with our material nature, with our karma, of course. How we react to it, that's the key. How we react. We should react with knowledge. Then we can get freed. If we don't, then we continue in this world of duality. Unfortunate, what to do. Well, it's getting late, it's 8 o'clock. And we have to get on with the kirtan, and we're leaving for tomorrow morning very, very early in the morning. And we're going to London and then to Greece, so we've got to move along a little bit here. Thank you all for coming. Om Shanti, 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 hey. Peace. Everyone wants peace. Peace is within your heart. When you're peaceful within your heart, automatically you can be a part in trying to create a genuinely peaceful situation in the world today. Hare Krishna. Okay, so I think we're going to have some kirtan now, is that right? Prabhupada, Pram Prabhu? Kirtan? Kirtan? Who wants to lead the kirtan? What about someone else leading for a change? I've been leading everything for days on end. Who'd like to lead kirtan? Who can lead kirtan, Prabhupada, Pram? You'd like to lead it out, Sridhar Prabhu? Go for it. Go for it. So we're going to have chanting again, and please join us. And this way, this is the will of the Lord. So let's work in relationship with the Lord's will, not that the Lord has to work in relationship with our will. That's devotion, that's bhakti yoga. We try to work according to the will of the Lord. The material world is, we want the Lord to work according to our will, and if he doesn't, we get upset. Or if we think he doesn't. You're like a loving parent who knows what's best for us. Okay, what do you want? Cartels, Madunga?
They're just going to bring cartels.
Cartels, okay. I will take it away.